horse riders in the region. The paper on horse riding in your parks and reserves is sincerely welcomed by the district's riders. We've been lobbying for some recognition for many years, and other than an occasional meeting with staff or counselors, nothing much has emerged from those discussions. This paper opens the door for that recognition now and identifies some future options. However, before commenting on the horse riding options presented in the paper, I feel I must comment on paragraph 4, which provides background to this paper from the council's perspective. 4.1, while the Kapiti Equestrian Advocacy Group initiated some of the early approaches with council, the Horowhenua Group, which has been formed subsequently, has now taken the lead and has made a number of submissions to council, including the last long-term plan in 2021 to 2024. That submission was omitted from this report. I just want to make a comment. We did make a submission. In 4.2, the opportunities sought by the equestrian community are correctly stated under 4.2. There are 3. 4.3, the equestrian community has been lobbying for inclusion in the shared pathway strategy for some time, and were at one point promised to be considered and invited to attend when the group met next. That has never happened. We have not been able to enter into any discussions with the roading team on this issue. And as this report and their earlier report in the deliberations for the long-term plan demonstrate a mindset not really open to include horse riders. The reasons given and the evidence cited do not substantiate the claims. It should be noted that the evidence provided by the roading team was mainly from England and identified situation where horse riders were the victims of other users over the road and shared path, such as bicyclists, motorcyclists, and car drivers. Equestrians still want to be considered on the roading issues and the shared pathway strategy. And we asked the question, how can we make this happen? 4.4, the equestrian community is disappointed that council did not advocate for the inclusion of horses on the shared path along O2 and L. Here we have a multi-use pathway, including horses, all the way from Paikakariki to Otaki, stopped in its tracks, due in part by the council's refusal to advocate on behalf of horse riders with NZTA. Such avocation would have cost the council nothing and may have tipped scales in horse riders' favor. If not incorporated now, reality is the pathway will never be incorporated. It is not too late, however. The road is still in its planning phases, and we ask that you please reconsider your stance on this issue. The Horowhenua Equestrian Advocacy Group would like the opportunity to open discussions with the roading people and the council on the inclusion of horses in the shared pathway strategy, and on council supporting the continuation of the bridleway from Otaki to Leuven on the O2 and L. Moving on to paragraph 6, the options. Target reserve. While this area is currently quite small and shared with other users, opening it up for horse riders would be seen as a good step forward. It would be very interesting with further development to include the round bush, making the site much larger and with options for a number of trails. In terms of the beaches, we are blessed with some of the best beaches for riding in the Horowhenua. Car and float parking is mixed, some dedicated off-road and other ones on quiet roads. We welcome the offered opportunity to work alongside council and local progressive associations to ensure all parties continue to develop and share access to these beaches. Cousins Avenue Reserve. I visited the site yesterday to ensure I understood the current situation. Up until the last year or two, horse riders were accessing the tracks through the forest to the north, all the way to Himitangi. However, that is not the case now, as that access was fenced off to keep out motorcyclists and other vehicle users. Such fencing does not necessarily need to keep horses out. The installation of a horse-friendly gate, which has been done on several occasions in the Kapiti Coast, would suffice. I, and I'm sure the Kapiti Coast District Council, would be happy to supply plans and discuss this option further with council. It would be great to get this horse riding opportunity back, and we support the council in doing so. I will not comment individually on the other long-term opportunities identified in the paper, but to say they all sound very interesting, and given the opportunity, we would like to work alongside council in such developments. Please give us that opportunity. In conclusion, I'd like to thank the Parks and Reserve people for opening up their minds to the inclusion of horse riding in the district, and ask that the roading people do likewise. Thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate that. Councillor Tukapua, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Richard, for your submission. We've had some devastating news as recent as yesterday, and my question is going to be for David, whether he can share that about shared pathways across our whole network, and what's happened there with NZTA, just for your information. But hopefully beyond that, there's some of these smaller ones we could perhaps continue conversations with, but this will give you a good understanding where we're at now, which was quite different from this agenda.
Thank you.
Okay, just in terms of responding to Councillor Tukapua's question, look, we were advised yesterday around our funding for the National Land Transport program for the next 3 years, and there has been some indication that the walkway and cycleway funding was not as wasn't what we had originally asked for. Just in the last 24 hours, though, we have been working very hard with Waka Kotahi to just get an understanding of what are the opportunities for us in terms of the retention of funding that we've asked for cycleways and walkways. So we're just in discussions with Waka Kotahi now. One of the challenges that we do have, and it is highlighted in the report, sort of standalone bridleways are not funded or not subsidised through the walking and cycleways program. But that's not to say that we can't look at opportunities for shared pathways going forward. So just in summary, whilst we thought we had some bad news yesterday, it may not be as bad as we originally thought. We're in discussions with Waka Kotahi now just to see how we can take that forward constructively.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Deputy Mayor Mason.
Thank you, Mayor Wandin. My question is to Richard. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, 140 horse riders in the region. What do you classify as the region, Richard?
Well, the majority of those people live in the Horowhenua, but we also have riders come into our area from both Kapiti and from the Manawatu. So some of those, that 140, would be ratepayers of those regions, but come to Horowhenua to ride on our beaches or our hills or other places.
So it's not 140 local horse riders, it's 140 horse riders who might make use of whatever's available for riding across the Horowhenua. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, these are the members of the Horowhenua Equestrian Advocacy Group.
Okay.
Is that number?
They're all active horse riding trail participants.
Yes.
Okay. Horse-friendly fences. Can you just, I know you've said we should go to Kapiti and find out about them. Can you give us a description of what they are?
Yeah, I think they've got two now in Kapiti. One at the start of the Waikanae River Trail, right up by the highway number 1. And there's one other one. I'm not sure where that other one is, but I know the one's by the highway. It's basically a wooden structure with some kind of 2x4s put across the bottom, spaced out, so that motorcyclists can't easily get in. Cars certainly can't get in, and horses can step over the planks on the ground and still get into the facility.
And just one final thing. I think at the start of your submission to us today, or your conversation, you indicated that while you'd had some meetings, nothing much had happened. And I feel a bit frustrated by that, because I think we have listened really solidly through the long-term plan process, and we are working, as you can see by this report that's come to council today, to ensure that we, try and build up capacity. So I do want to add a bit of defence around that there has been work and there is commitment in terms of thinking about recreational opportunities for all pathway users. And it might not be the result you want right now, but it certainly is a work in progress.
Yeah, certainly this paper indicates that.
You didn't have a question there, Councillor Jennings?
Oh, yeah, look, if you don't mind. The question I had was just around the target reserve Foxton. I understood from your submission previously, Rick, that the main priority, short-term priority, was to just get access to a number of reserves, and that you weren't necessarily requesting or seeking formal tracks to be developed, and because I see in the paper, obviously one of the indicative cost for forming tracks and installing signs and directional markers, all that kind of thing. So my question really is the priority getting access, or is it really important to also have the signage and the directional markers and actually form tracks?
Well, certainly the priority for horse riders is access. We don't need a lot of markers or marked trails, but if there are multi-users, they may want to identify certain trails that horses can go on and certain trails that they shouldn't. There might be something in that regard, but we don't really need any facilities once we get into an area.
You basically just need, in some situations, the signs to be taken down that say no horses, basically. Is that right?
Gates,
yeah.
And the gates to be opened.
Understand. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Richard, thank you very much. Appreciate the time. Oh, sorry, Councillor Allen, you have a question?
So subsequent to Councillor Jennings' question, and just to sharpen the pencil, would you be comfortable, given this is an unsubsidised work, if council were to offer those facilities subject to conditions, but that you met all the financial costs involved?
Well, our organization has absolutely no funds, but we question many times the funding costs. And we really think that we don't need to spend much money at all, if anything, to actually get rides where we'd enjoy going. So we don't really see there needs to be a cost.
So what I'm understanding is there's the opportunity perhaps for the association to provide the manpower to do, to make whatever tracks are necessary, and that would come at no cost to council. So it's not necessarily about you having access to funds, but access to manpower to do the work to make it all happen.
I could see that happening. I think certainly in terms of if we were going to put in a horse gate, we might be able to get our people to help put it in, or pay for part of it to get put in. If there was additional costs, we'd look at that seriously.
Okay, thanks, Richard. Appreciate again your time. As you've seen, the topic is on the table, and we are talking about it. So hopefully we will continue to do that, and there will be some more development of some of those options that we've talked about.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Okay, moving to page number 7, the proceedings of the Community Wellbeing Committee, 2.1, 2.2, that these minutes be received. Could I have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Kay Simmons, Councillor Deputy Mayor Mason, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. The proceedings of the Finance, Audit and Risk Committee from the 25th of August, 2.1, 2.2, that these be received. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Bishop, seconded Councillor Brannigan. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. So we have 2.3, that as recommended by the Finance, Audit and Risk Committee, the Horowhenua District Council approves 1.87 million of additional capital budget for the 2021/22 year, with this being comprised of a carry forward of 1.62 million from 2020/21 and additional funding to complete the Foxton Beach Surf Club building upgrade of 250,000, and further that the Horowhenua District Council notes that 150,000 of the additional budget will be funded externally. Can I have a mover and a seconder for those, please? Move Councillor Kay Simmons. A seconder? Councillor Brannigan. Any discussion or debate? Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you. I'm just clarifying that the and further, the 150,000 will be funded externally refers to the Foxton Beach Surf Club building upgrade. But it's not clear.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, the motion's on the table. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Okay, moving to the mayoral report. I'll move receipt of that report. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Allen, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Against? Carried. Any questions of that report? There being none, let's move to the monitoring report. On page 23. Could I have a mover and a seconder that this report be received, please? Councillor Isaacs, seconded Deputy Mayor Mason. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Any issues to be raised in that report? Okay, thank you. Moving to the Chief Executive's report on page 27. I'll move receipt of that report. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Allen, thank you. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you. Against? Carried. So we have 2.3, that the Horowhenua District Council approves the amended Wellington Regional Leadership Committee Agreement in terms of reference dated July 2021. On the line, we do have Kim Kelly, who's the, you call yourself, Tim, the Regional Leadership Director. Is that correct? Is there anything you want to say by introducing this topic?
I might just explain the key differences from the old one to the new one. So the key things that are relevant for you. So in the original one that you signed off probably late last year now, so remember the Regional Leadership Committee does the Regional Growth Framework, Regional Economic Development and Regional Economic Recovery. The original one you had signed off had Horowhenua not involved in Regional Economic Development and Regional Economic Recovery. So it had both both iwi and the council not involved. So essentially the regional economic development and recovery was for the Wellington regional councils. The updated version has taken all that out. So Horowhenua is now at the table at the leadership committee for the regional growth framework and regional economic development and regional economic recovery, which from my point of view makes total sense. So one of the projects the leadership committee is doing is a regional economic development plan, and that will include Horowhenua, just like the regional growth framework did. And probably the other key one that might be of interest to you is in the original version, only the local government members could have alternates. So iwi and central government didn't. So in this version, everybody is able to have an alternate. So it makes the committee much more equitable.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Tukapua.
Yeah, I agree. I think it makes sense that we are included in the economic development part, but why the change? Who influenced, or what was the motivation there?
I mean, when we started writing that agreement, which was probably about a year ago now, I think the thinking was around regional economic development, and regional economic recovery was just focused on that kind of traditional GW region. But the more we got to the point of finishing the regional growth framework, it just didn't make sense to have the Horowhenua partners, because part of you guys being involved in the regional growth framework is that you are now in the housing and employment market for that wider region. So if that is the case, you should also be commenting on economic development. I think slowly over time it just made more sense.
Can I just add, Perry, that it was unanimously accepted by all members of the leadership committee that we should be part of that too, which was good to see. Councillor Jennings.
Yeah, Kim, just a question around cost commitment, financial commitment from council. So I think we've had some information through from the chief executive by email, just confirming in terms of what the size of the contribution is. But so can I just clarify that the participation in these additional two areas, does it generate a greater, or does it therefore require a greater contribution, or does the existing contribution cover that?
The figure that I suspect you've got, because I sent it in, covers all three of those aspects. So I did the calculation based on essentially a kind of cost per head almost, based on the GW rate. Yeah, probably to be fair, if you had just been doing the regional growth framework, it would be less, because the secretariat would be doing less for you. But given that most of the work of the leadership committee is actually the regional growth framework, it wouldn't have been much less.
Thank you.
Okay, so the recommendation is that the Horowhenua District Council approves the amended Wellington Regional Leadership Committee Agreement and terms of reference dated July 2021. I'm happy to move that. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Isaacs, thank you. Any further debate or discussion? Put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Kim.
That's
Appreciate
all right.
your time.
Yeah, bye.
Okay, moving to 3.2, which is the quarterly economic monitor. Any one wish to ask questions or make observations on that? Okay, 3.3 is the Horowhenua District Council subsidised e-waste recycling proposal, which is on page, sorry, 82 of your report. And we do have a recommendation on 2.4 that the Horowhenua District Council adopts the subsidised e-waste recycling proposal. Are there any questions or clarifications sought on this item? Councillor Jennings.
Yeah, look, I'm conscious of not taking too much time on what is a relatively minor amount of money and minor thing. I guess my question is around why we have not just adopted a cost recovery approach, as in a break-even type approach. It was a bit confusing to me in terms of the table, why there were some where we were subsidising and there were other activities that we were making a profit off. And then the sort of supplementary to that is that I see that one of the key areas of issue that we have as a district is the dumping of TVs and large monitors and computer monitors. And so I wondered why there hadn't been any thought, or if there had been thought around prioritising those items in terms of this program.
David, are you going to answer that question, or?
Far too complicated for me. No, sorry. Esley or one of your team there, Esley, just to answer that question. I'll just check.
No, we don't have Esley on here or anyone from that team. Sorry, David.
Okay, look, unfortunately, Councillor Jennings, I'm unable to personally answer that question.
Look, that serves me right for not getting my question in before the meeting. I guess, yeah, what I'd be keen to understand is, because obviously we're trying to achieve, I think, greater uptake, and there's reference to three times the volume of waste. But I just wanted to make sure that we're getting the settings right in terms of encouraging the behaviour that we want to encourage, but also making sure that that we're, I guess, subsidising and incentivising the right things for the right reasons. And I think and for me at the moment, the table probably doesn't have the settings quite right for me to support it.
That's right, Isaac.
Just replying, trying to give Councillor Jennings a little bit more info. Look, I've had a look through it, I'm Sam, and obviously I've been out of the rubbish industry for about a year now, but to me it comes across as pretty fair, and what you'd expect in a lot of places. Some places maybe a little bit, I mean, we're probably a little bit cheaper on some things, but which is obviously designed to encourage people to stop putting them on the side of the roads and in parks and that, and actually take them to the proper place. So I think it's pretty balanced in my view, from my experience.
Councillor Tukapua.
My question was going to be around, because my understanding is it's to deal to the fly tipping problem that and we experienced that more during the COVID. And this, I believe, is, well, as far as I've read, is just going to be at the Foxton transfer station. Yet the problem is across the district, and how, I mean, I can't assume, but I guess live-in people could take it over there. But why? And then you'd end up with more than 120. I'm pretty sure of that, if that was the case, especially if we advertise the fact. So it's a little bit. How can we be sure of some of these numbers? That's all.
Sorry, in terms of how can we be sure of managing these numbers? Are you talking about the dollar amounts?
The fly tipping district wide, we know that it's mostly big items like TVs. This opportunity is just at the Foxton transfer station, yet people in the bin where the populace is as well ideally would take it over there because it's cheaper, or we'd want them to instead of chucking it in some reserve, and if that were the case, the numbers would be more than triple, I would expect. And if we were to put out some sort of promotion that there's this opportunity now, in a year, I'm pretty sure we'd get more than 120. So I just want to be confident that this is accurate. Otherwise, it's might not even be break even. But yeah, I just want to be.
Councillor Isaacs.
You just replying to Councillor Takapua there, and I don't know this for sure, but I would imagine it's only in Foxton because that's the only transfer station that we control. The other transfer stations are run by Midwest, and you're definitely right. I'd say these figures are based on Foxton, not on the greater community, because there'll definitely be more than 120 TVs in a year. I can guarantee that.
Deputy Mayor Mason.
Thank you, Mayor Wandin. I absolutely support this paper. I think it's a great initiative. Thank you to the Chief Executive for bringing this forward. But I think, and while as a council we don't want to be going up in opposition to other private operators, who I know there are quite a few of who do take whiteware and TVs and things, or maybe not so much TVs, but I just wonder how we can expand it, because I think the liability that sits with cleaning up fly tipping is probably greater than the $5,000 that we're proposing to put into the subsidy. But it's not just that liability of cost, it's a liability to the environment with all of this e-waste that goes into it and is often hidden and not even seen as fly tipping. I'm very keen for this to be explored more and for us to see what we can do about educating and encouraging people to use these services. And thank you, Councillor Isaacs, for clarifying why it might only be in Foxton, because that was something that sat as a question with me. But I'd like to think that we as a council send a message through our waste minimisation consideration that we want more of this sort of initiative. So yeah, I'd just like to see how we can do more, perhaps than what's proposed here.
Councillor Allen.
Yeah, look, in view of the previous three speakers, I move that this report lie on the table. It's a number of really important questions being raised. It's not a matter of urgency, and I'd prefer to see those issues being addressed in a fuller report.
Can you just specify the issues that you think we need to be addressing?
Well, the ones that have been raised, for a start, we need absolute clarification in the answer to Councillor Tukapua's question. Councillor Isaacs has given us what he thinks is the answer, but we haven't had an official answer to that. More substantively, Councillor Jennings' questions about what is this all about broadly. Should we be looking at a cost recovery model across the services rather than just on this particular issue? So those are two things I think that we really need to hear from the officers. They're not here today, so why not bring back a report that addresses those, unless there is some reason to act with urgency.
Through you, Your Worship, just my suggestion is that we leave this, let this lie on the table. Waiting for 4 weeks is not going to be either it doesn't really matter at the moment. But I think it's important to, and I will talk to the waste minimisation officer just in terms of what might come back by way of a report. I think what he's done here today is just looking at, and in some ways it's almost a trial, putting through the Foxton transfer station, because we can actually control the activity there because we own it. But if we can just hold it for a month and we can come back with further information looking at what we might be able to do to encourage more of this type of collection of this type of e-waste on a district-wide basis. But we would have to take into account how we actually control that, given that we actually don't control the biggest transfer station in the district, which is in Levin. But that's something that we can actually explore. But my suggestion would be that we do leave it, let it lie on the table just for the moment.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Mason.
Thank you, I'd be interested to know, if possible, in that report, some indication around what it's costing us a year for fly tipping, if those figures are available?
Okay. Yep, that's fine.
Yes.
So can I just get a nod of heads or a hands up that everyone is comfortable that we lay this on the table at the moment for a report to come next month? Any disagreement with that? Okay, thank you.
Not a disagreement, Bernie, but we've asked many times for the amount in regards to fly tipping, and it's never been answered. So that would be good, what Deputy Mayor Mason's brought up.
Okay.
I think it's been quite hard for the team to separate that cost when there's a lot of things just happening on the side of the road at any time of the day or night that's picked up. So thanks.
Yeah, look, the only issue with that, we can provide that information, I think, but we won't be able to provide specific information regarding the e-waste fly tipping because we don't cost that out.
Yeah.
Fly tipping is just a single cost. We don't break it down into fly tipping of e-waste or green waste or whatever it might be. So it'll just be a one large figure.
And can I just add that in response to this report, it's just a really small step in the e-waste. We've been asked to be doing this. We've been asked many times to do something about this for the last 3 to 4 years, and it's just, a step. There's a whole lot of organic and inorganic suggestions that are going to be probably brought to us in the near future for going towards the waste minimisation component. So I just wanted to add that. Thanks.
Okay, duly noted. All right, so the matter of the e-waste policy will remain on the table until next month. Okay, so moving to our late item, which is we're calling 8.4, the representation review 2021 extension of the consultation period. Could I just move receipt of this report? And could I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. So the recommendation is that the representation review 2021 consultation period be extended to Wednesday, the 6th of October 2021. Does anyone wish to? Councillor Isaacs.
Is that the latest date we can go to, Your Worship?
I believe it is. Although, Sue, that will allow enough time to for the hearing and submissions to take place on the 20th of October and for us to adopt a final proposal on the 27th. So we do need that sort of 2-week period to get ready to hear submissions.
We could probably push out another week. Yeah, I kind of chose the 6th of October because it pretty much gives us 4 weeks from today, which we had 4 weeks for consultation anyway. So I kind of figured that might be enough, but we can certainly push out to the following Tuesday if councillors wish. It's not going to make any difference.
I'm just concerned, Sue, though, that if we get a great number of submissions, then it's going to be quite a exercise to collate and sort out all those submissions.
We have some pretty swish officers in the background who can collate quite easily within that time frame. It would mean submissions close on the Tuesday. We have to have the agenda out on Thursday. And I think officers can do that quite easily if you wanted to go out that far. I guess the only downside of having it going too long is people kind of think, oh, I've got plenty of time, and they pop their submission form aside. Yeah, so perhaps going too long may run the risk of it getting forgotten about because it's too long.
The whole purpose of this obviously is because of our lockdown periods and the need to have face-to-face meetings if needed. And so that's why the extension is being recommended to allow that time. Who knows how long we might be, at least we're in level 2 now. So it does allow some opportunity for face-to-face meetings if needed.
Yes, can you hear me, Bernie?
Yes, sorry, Councillor
Hi.
Kevin.
Yeah, I just want to, support the extension there. We our community in Miranui, we knew that because of the lockdown that lots of things were going on. People were trying to put food on the table, and the vaccine rollouts and all those sorts of things that were happening within our community. And people, children tried to, parents tried to get their children, schooled, at home and sorts of things. And we're just, as a community, we knew that people weren't really concerned about the representation review at this stage. And that's because, there's too many other things that are going on. So I'm really supporting that extension. Got it.
Sure. Councillor Allen.
I move 2.3.
Thank you. Could I have a seconder for 2.3, Councillor Brannigan? So 2.3, that the representation review 2021 consultation period be extended to Wednesday, the 6th of October 2021. Got a mover and a seconder. Any further debate or clarification? Put the motion. All those in favour? Wayne, I can't see your left hand, Wayne. Is that? Yeah. Thanks. Any against? All right, the motion's carried. Thank you. So now moving to item on page 87, which is the localised flooding event response, the debrief report from June 21. I'll move receipt of this report. Is there? Could I have a seconder? Councillor Isaacs. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Against? Right, noting Councillor Brannigan has stepped away. Any questions or clarification sought on this? It is for information purposes. No, Councillor Jennings, sorry.
Yeah, just really happy that this report has come to the meeting and acknowledge that there's going to be a sort of a follow-up paper around specifically the water treatment plant issues. And I think it's really important that we obviously reflect on these situations and then take learnings. And I guess there were a couple of aspects that I did particularly wanted to sort of focus in on. And the first is around the comment under the, let's call it bullet point 3, which is contingency plans. Oh, sorry, this is under heading 4, issues for consideration, executive summary. So it's bullet point 3. Contingency plans for critical events involving essential service delivery require development and or review. And then there's a further comment down below in the substance of the report that talks about there does not appear to be a contingency plan for critical events involving essential service delivery. And so that jumped off the page at me, given the critical nature of obviously water and water treatment. And I just wondered, I guess, through the Chief Executive, in terms of that item and addressing that observation and that bullet point, are you able to just talk us through what's happening and who's, I guess, leading that work and when we can expect to have that in place?
Okay, Lisa, are you on the call? Lisa Slade? Okay, are you able to answer that, Lisa? Oh, look, I'm not, I wasn't involved in this particular part of the review, which was the incident itself, and I'm not quite sure if you're able to answer Councillor Jennings' question.
Oh, sorry,
Lisa, sorry.
Lisa Slade's not on the call, not on the Zoom. Sorry.
Oh, okay. My apologies. I thought she was. Okay, look.
Yep.
Can I come back to you, Councillor Jennings, and I'll forward a response to your questions by email, and I'll forward that to all the councillors.
Yeah, well, look, what I'll do is, because in the immediate aftermath of the event, I sort of sent through some observations around things that I think had gone well, and then some things that I didn't think had gone well. So what I propose to do, if acceptable to you, is I'll package that up as a separate email with some specific questions and resend that. If that's
Yeah,
Yep.
appreciate that. Thank you. And
Thank you.
my apologies for not being able to answer the question.
No
I wasn't actually involved in that, but that's okay.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, nothing further. We'll move to the discussion on the horse riding options on parks and reserves in the Horowhenua District. Could I move that report be received? Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Allen, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Any further discussion or comments to be made on this report? I don't see any. Oh, sorry, Councillor Jennings.
Yeah, I think Councillor Kitu beat me to it. So.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Kitu.
Just it's really a comment that it was good that Richard was able to clarify, the Kapiti, area in the Horowhenua area, and because when I was reading through the document, I was asking him, and asking why is Kapiti sort of coming down, into some of our areas. So if that's something that you clarified for me, in that space. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jennings.
And yeah, mine was just a very narrow point around the short-term option around the target reserve Foxton. Presumably, because this report talks about these being indicative costs, and obviously that there being no existing budget for those things at the moment, I understand that practically we can open the access to that reserve. That's fine, but the commitment of money to do anything, that obviously there needs to be some further decisions around that at a later time. Is that correct?
Correct. That's correct.
Arthur is on the call if there are any questions of him.
Oh, good.
Councillor Mitchell.
Just that I would assume that it's not quite as simple as just opening up target reserve to horse riders, because we do have other groups there. Like, isn't there a pistol club there too, which could be a problem with horses? So am I correct, Arthur, that this requires more than just opening up reserves for horses to go wherever they like?
Through you, Chair, and to Councillor Mitchell. Yes, that is the case. It's not as easy just opening up the reserves. Most of the problems you get with horses and other users is on the side of the other users, who sometimes can be intimidated by horses, particularly in regards to the target reserve. There would be a need to define certain areas in there for horses to use. And you're absolutely right, there is currently a pistol club that operates up there, which obviously pistol shots and horses don't necessarily mix particularly too well. So there is a little bit of work to do around that to try and tidy that particular issue up. But as I say, more often than not, with the issue with horse riding, it's not so much about the horses. Speaking to the comments that Councillor Jennings and Councillor Allen made earlier, it's more about the people who are sharing those accesses and their use of those reserves with horses.
Thanks, Arthur. Councillor Allen.
So just so I'm clear in my own mind about where we go from here, am I correct in my understanding that A, if there's money involved, it needs to go through the AP LTP process, and B, if there is not money involved, that that Arthur's team will bring a report to council if application is made from the equestrian people about the sort of conditions that we would need to be looking at. Have I got those two assumptions right?
Again, through you, Chair. I think I'll just clarify. The budgets at the moment for target reserve are not particularly extensive. We may be able to do something in the existing budgets we got. What I'm saying is that we haven't actually physically identified that money for that particular piece of work. And obviously, if we use non-routine budgets for this work, the likes of Target Reserve, then there's less to use in other areas. But we would be more than happy to speak to the equestrian group around how we might do some small improvements on site, whether that be signage or otherwise with our existing budgets, to try and make it more acceptable. I think as you talk about the larger options, which were some of those mid and longer term options, those would have to be an entirely separate approach to council, whether that was via the annual plan or whether that was via the long-term plan.
Councillor Jennings.
Yes, so I think thanks very much for that answer, Arthur, because that's essentially what the point I'm sort of driving at, which is that I'd be horrified if we were spending $27,000 on signage and directional markers. That for me is not, I have no appetite for that whatsoever. So certainly keen for officers to explore how access could be facilitated right now at the lowest possible cost within, you know, and maybe it is just some minor signage, but certainly I wouldn't want to see the commitment of the numbers that we're seeing in that table without some further discussion.
And Mayor
Councillor Tukapua.
and Arthur, I would like, you know, if this was progress, to understand where you'd be taking from to make this happen. Like, what reserve will miss out for this piece of work?
Robert, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. Just to Arthur. It's really a question of about the reserve management plan and how far that's progressed along some of the suggested areas within the Mangore, Hennessy Road, possible development of housing and things like that. So, you know, has there been any progress, any of the reserve management plans within the Shannon Mangore space?
At this moment, we've not done too much more in the Mangori area. Clearly, we did the Shannon reserve management plans. I think it was last year or the year before. Certainly they're in place. However, it doesn't explicitly talk about the trails discussed in that horse riding report, which are notional trails, should there be an appetite from council to move forward on trying to make some of those things eventuate.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Arthur. Sorry, Councillor Mitchell, did you have a question?
Yes, can I just ask Arthur, so the Ohau River Reserve's shared pathway, including toilets and car park, is that already sort of there as a walking, cycling suggestion that's going to happen in the reasonably near future? And that horses could just use it? It's not actually a cost for horses, is it?
Again, through you, Chair, you're absolutely right. We have got a figure in the long-term plan in year 3 to start looking at developing a walkway along the river reserves. However, there are a number of private owners along there as well. So, you know, it's not in a situation where we can just go on and start, you know, a trail. We would need to have conversations with landowners along that stretch of river to get access easements and so on and so forth. But certainly there is a figure in the long-term plan in year 3 to start looking at some of those options moving forwards.
Okay, thank you, Arthur. Appreciate the time. So there's no decision making in that report, just a report for information. No doubt there will be, if there are any further decisions to be made, that will come before council. So that brings us to the end of our ordinary part of our agenda. We now will be moving to in committee. So could I move that the public be excluded from the following parts of the proceedings of this meeting, which include C1, the update of the ex-plantation reserve in Douglas Street, C2, property disposal, C3, property disposals program. That the public conduct of the part of this meeting would be likely to result in the disclosure of information for which good reason for withholding exists under section 7. Could I have a seconder for that, please? Deputy Councillor Mitchell, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. We'll just have a 5-minute break, everyone,